order. Welcome, everyone. We're reconvening an open session after adjourning our closed session, and I have no action to report taken in closed session today. So our item 4C, our next item is the Pledge of Allegiance, and it's so nice to have all of these OIS students with us. So please help me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Great. Well, welcome to our students from OIS. We're excited to hear about your lunchtime programming at OIS. Aida?
Yes.
Who's going to present for us?
All right. Thank you. I think we'll have Ms. Esmat present, so I'll turn off. But we're very excited to welcome. Where's Miss Wayne? Oh, there she is.
All
Right there.
right. Hello.
Okay, right in front.
I'm a little disoriented.
Right here.
Where I'm supposed to-
You're presenting to. Oh, I'm sorry. You stand right there. Yes.
All
You
rearranged.
present right here. I apologize. Yes.
So stand here.
Yes.
Yes.
But yes, thank you so much for being here, and we're very excited to welcome our OIS students and staff who are sent to the board about some lunchtime programming.
Thank
So,
you.
yeah.
Well, we're excited to be here, and I'm really excited because we have 8 fabulous Bulldogs who will talk about their experience during lunch. So we're here to highlight our intramural sports, which take place during lunchtime, and our multiple clubs as well. BTP Advance. Thank you. This program, for the kids, it might just be something fun to do during lunch, but for us, we know that it was a really important endeavor that grew out of a need for structured activity during lunch. And the intramural sports program developed first in the 2011 to 2012 school year. And it came out of site council where we were talking about what do we do with our 900 students at lunchtime? What could we possibly do? They were coming from the elementary schools where there was recess and much less time. Coming to OIS where at that time there was 40 minutes of lunch. And so site council developed the idea to have an intramural sports program, but we had 2 separate lunches at that time, 6th grade lunch separate from the 7-8 lunch. We then took it to our parents club who supported the program because as everybody knows, teachers by contract get a 30-minute duty-free lunch. So in order to have these programs, our parents club was super supportive, and at that time EFO, now it's one, in funding the 30 minutes for teachers to get compensated to give out their lunch once a week or more than once a week. So our site plan goal currently, or the CIPSA, the Civil Plan for Student Achievement, the second goal supports the district's, one of the district's strategic directions as well. And it's to develop and implement initiatives and strategies to build a safe and supportive learning community that fosters a sense of belonging and connectedness for all learners. Some would argue, myself included, that that's especially important at middle school during adolescence. Next. So let's watch a short KOS video that Ron Keller, our yearbook and video production teacher, created for us. It's less than a minute, I believe.
Please.
Kevin.
Check your audio out.
And then can you maximize it?
Kevin, you knew this would come. That's not online. You're right.
We see what's going on. Fantasy Dragons.
French club.
The
Yeah.
information's pretty cute, but I can talk through it.
We know it works on. So we test it.
Correct.
I know her. Yeah,
Can we start from the beginning, Kevin? Yeah. Thank you. That's great. Hey.
Okay, so yeah, Katie, if you can go to the first club. So we currently have 15 different OIS lunchtime clubs that are offered. Most of them were student initiated. Some of them were teachers who thought that would be good and got interest, but usually it's generated by students who then find a teacher advisor, which is really awesome. And you can see every single day there's something for somebody to go to. So 15 clubs. The clubs started in, I think, the 2017 to 18 school year, if I remember correctly, for the kids that didn't want to participate in sports. And so that, and then the next one is a slide about the sports. We have 12 different intramural sports that are happening, 6th grade sports and then 7, 8 compete against each other. And those are our PE teachers who run those classes. So I'm going to welcome up our 8 fabulous Bulldogs to tell you what clubs they go to. You guys will introduce yourself, what club you belong to, how it started, why, and why you like it. Yeah? So come on up. And I'll let you just one at a time. You can say your name and why what club or clubs you participate in.
My name is Mateo Kim and Lucas Crittenden. So we started, he started chess club. When I first came to OIS, there was no existing chess club, and I was pretty interested in chess. It was super easy to start one, just getting a teacher to give up their lunch and their room for chess club.
And Mateo, isn't it true that Miss Penny doesn't know how to play chess, or does she?
Mrs. Finney, I don't think so.
But yet that room is always jammed out. Ton of kids, 30 kids maybe playing chess.
So around 20. We also do stuff like puzzles. He'll put up a puzzle from like a book or like, a website or whatever. He'll put it up, and whoever can like solve it, most people like work together. And whoever solves it can get like some candy and stuff. Yeah.
A chess-related puzzle, right?
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's awesome. Thank you.
My name is Olivia Diamond. I am currently part of at least 5 clubs, ranging from digital arts club to pride club to creativity club. At OIS lunchtime, honestly, what I like most about the clubs is there's no limits. There's no filter on what you can do. There is no supervisor telling you, oh, you can't do this, you can't do that. So that means there are some pretty strong communities built. And there are a lot of ideas that people will have in class, and sometimes will not be able to be put into classwork that you can cultivate in clubs and make into real life. So I think it's a good opportunity to have students get to grow their ideas.
Nice.
My name is Adam Nolan, and I go to 5 different clubs. But one club that is pretty important to me, and I know a lot of other people, is Pride Club. Pride Club is a very it's a very valuable resource for kids and just kids who are questioning sexuality, gender identity, and it gives them a place to express themselves and to be with people who just like get it. It's a place where they can feel loved and appreciated, and it's just a really good resource for kids. And yeah.
Hello, I am Merritt Thompson, and I go to 4 clubs a week. But I would like to highlight one today called D&D Club. So I was new to school this year. I was like one of the 5 new kids that joined, and that was kind of weird. But in D&D, everyone was kind of, some people were new to the game. They didn't have a group already. And I was able to join one of these new groups. And I had a lot of fun. People made weird decisions, and I got to roll with it as leader of the group. And it was fun, because it's like they just make some weird decision. And you're like, I guess that's what's happening now. Plan, but I guess that's not happening. And even now, I have a new group that's filled with my friends, and it's a lot of fun. And there's still that whole sense of, what the heck are you doing? I did not plan this. What are you doing? And it's just a lot of fun. And you also just get to meet new people. If someone asks to join your table, they join it. And everyone kind of goes with it. It's a group where everyone gets to express themselves in their own way, like be able to become something else for a little bit. And it might just be 40 minutes a week, but sometimes that's just my highlight.
Hello, my name is Dason Day. I've been with the OIS Green Team for 2 years. Basically, what each and every one of us views at Green Team most important is our work and our contribution to the good of our environment, and we do that at school by keeping our campus clean. What do we do at Green Team? That might be a big question. For one, shifts. Every lunch, every brunch, we do shifts. We stand by trash cans and we help other students organize their trash. We help pick up trash around the campus. Another thing, organize events. We have events such as, which is actually coming up, we have Earth Week. We have many planned events for Earth Week. And lastly, we have discussions that change the way the school to make it more comfortable for the students and clean. With that, our work has shown great results. With previous to our work, it was below 20% in diversion rates. A diversion rate is a trash diversion rate. It's basically the correct amount of trash going to the correct bin. It was below 20%. But through around a year of hard work through trash posters and Green Team shifts, we have turned that less than 20% to over 40%. This is a sound cannot have been done without the efforts and contributions of each Green Team member. Thank you.
I'm Gabriella Garzanello, and I'm also part of the Green Team. Here at Green Team, not only do we help keep our campus clean, but we're also provided with a bunch of opportunities that we otherwise wouldn't have if we weren't part of it. For example, the Broward Youth Awards. We were able to see some young environmental leaders talk about the work they're doing, which really opened my mind and kind of taught me about how where the trash actually does go, how the food waste can actually have such a big impact on our environment. Green Team has really impacted me in helping me understand the impact we can have on in our environment, and I hope that I can continue helping it through Green Team.
I'm Ava Marshall. I'm also a member of the Green Team. And as you know, at a middle school with hundreds of students, it can get pretty messy. The Green Team is there to help clean up the trash. But our Green Team isn't just for cleaning up our campus. Our Green Team is also about environmental awareness and teaching people about the environment and things they can do to help our environment and combat climate change. The Green Team does many things, like Jason mentioned, like shifts, cleaning up trash, awareness weeks, and spirit days to help raise environmental awareness. Thanks.
So these folks represent just a few of our clubs. As I mentioned, there are 15 different ones right now, but thank you so much for coming. And thank you for letting us do this.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
I don't have any questions, but I just want to thank all of our students for coming tonight and for sharing what it means to you to be part of these clubs. I think it's so meaningful for every student in our district to find a place where they feel confident and inspired and can be themselves and challenge themselves and find their community. And I just really appreciated everything that you all shared tonight.
Same, ditto. And I also want to thank our teachers, but a lot of our teachers who are the advisors for the clubs right here.
Yes, thank you.
Any other comments? Thank you so much for coming. We
Yes.
really, really appreciate it. Love hearing about what's going on our campuses.
Thank you.
So our next item is 6A, public comment. At a regular meeting of the Board of Trustees, the public may comment on items within the subject matter jurisdiction of the governing board. For items on the agenda, the public may comment at the time the board considers the agenda item. For items not on the agenda, the public may comment under item 6A, public comment. The Board of Trustees requests that individuals who would like to address the Board of Trustees on an item do so by filling out a request to address the OUSD school board card and turning it in to the superintendent prior to the agenda item. Cards are available at the meeting. Comments are limited to not more than 3 minutes. Groups are asked to limit their comments to a total of 5 minutes. The board shall limit the total time of public comment to 20 minutes. To comply with the Brown Act, the board may listen to comments from the speakers, but can neither discuss nor take action on the issues presented. So I see we have a number of comment cards, and I just want to quickly say that if some of these comments are on negotiations, we did have negotiations on our agenda as a closed session item, and the appropriate time for those comments would have been when we opened our meeting at 4:30 prior to our closed session. I see a lot of people here, and tonight I will allow your comments, but in the future, any items that are related to negotiations should be brought at the appropriate time, which would be at the beginning of our meeting. The other item that is relevant is our item 7A, our discussion item on the proposed state budget implications. So if any of the comments tonight are related to that item, I'd ask you to hold them until that item. And the third thing is, if any of you are a group, it's nice if you just make your comments out as one group for 5 minutes as opposed to 4 or 5 comments. If we have more than 20 minutes of comment at this time, we will adjourn public comment until the end of the meeting. So the first public comment I have is that Sean Brennan.
Good evening. Thank you to the board and to the community members present tonight for making the time to hear from your educators. OEA members are here tonight to share perspective on labor negotiations and the current status of bargaining in our district. Orinda Union Schools say that they have tremendous respect for our talented teachers. We can agree that nothing is more important than maintaining excellence in our schools than attracting and retaining high caliber teachers. We are now calling on our superintendent and our school board to do what is right for Orinda students by offering a competitive salary and benefits package for teachers. The state has provided an 8.22% cost of living adjustment for all per pupil funding. And we are simply asking that this COLA be passed along to employees to offset inflation, keep us competitive, and allow us to retain the best educators for our students. In an update to OUSD stakeholders, Superintendent Glimmy says that a raise index to the cost of living would force the district to consider reductions of staff and services. Meanwhile, OUSD sits on year-over-year budget reserves that exceed the state limit. We are grateful to the community for passing Measure Z, which brought Orinda teacher salaries up from the bottom to about the middle of the pack when compared to our neighboring districts. However, in light of a historically light COLA, other districts will offer substantial salary increases to their teachers this year. Indeed, we have seen many of them offer ongoing increases that exceed the COLA. If we accept the district's current offer of 3%, we will again fall to the bottom of salary comparisons in the area. Unfortunately, at this time, the district management has refused to budge, and we've been forced to declare an impasse. Now, an impasse is just the next step in the bargaining process and involves working with a state-provided mediator to help parties reach a compromise. We look forward to a productive mediation process that should help us reach a swift and effective resolution. If you are unable to attend our community forum on January 31st, we invite you all to join a second meeting in March to learn more about the teacher's perspective on negotiations. The day and time for this community forum will be announced via our Facebook page at Orinda Educators Association in the coming days. Thank you.
Next, we have Tess Marici.
Hello, my name is Tess Marici. I'm an 8th grade student at OIS, and I'm here to explain my situation after my teacher resigned about 2 months into the school year. So it had already been a pretty unusual year. First, we skipped the first 2 chapters of our history textbook. We ended up right in the middle. We skipped Native American history. Later, we went back to Native American history. So the whole year, we've been skipping around, changing our curriculums. It's been crazy. So when my core teacher did resign with no warning, as far as I know, there was no immediate long-term sub. So for, I think, if I'm remembering this correctly, it was a couple weeks. Then we didn't have one solid teacher. We had various administrators. We had the principal, we had the vice principal come in and help us and teach us, but we didn't have one sub. We had subs come in for one day. We had teachers give up their prep period and stay for an hour. And overall, they did a good job of keeping our class together, but overall, we were just learning the basics. We weren't deep diving into the topics that we learned. We were just getting exactly what we're supposed to be getting, but we weren't being challenged. So we did finally get a long-term sub, I think at the end of October. And we did get that stability, but we didn't know if we would have another teacher, a permanent teacher. And it was the middle of the school year. So we had no idea if we were gonna have a teacher at all that year. We did get our teacher in early this January, and she's supported us a lot more, and she's done exactly what I hoped and I expected and what I needed for my own education. she has paid attention to us. She's supported us. She knows my preferences, my likes and dislikes. She can recommend books at the drop of a hat. So that's the kind of teacher I want and I need. And since I love history and I love writing and I was, I hope, engaged, I got what I needed from that class. But a lot of kids in my class stopped taking it seriously. They stopped paying attention. They stopped trying. So the work quality went way down. People weren't paying attention. And it just wasn't a class anymore. It was just nap period. For a long time, we just had.
Thank you, Tess. I appreciate your coming to the board tonight and sharing your experience.
Turn it up.
Next, I have Amy Sue.
Hello, thank you for hearing me. My name is Amy Sue. I have an 8th grader and a 10th grader who's been in the Orinda school since kindergarten. We've had a really great experience. I'm also a life coach and an artist who knows there are always creative solutions. Although my youngest is almost out of OUSD, I want future generations of kids here to have a really excellent educational experience, and that begins with the teachers. So I'm here to speak on behalf of our teachers who I feel deserve to be paid a salary that reflects the importance of their work, like $1 million. But in the absence of that, I want us to offer them a competitive salary that allows them not to just survive, but to sustain, to dream, and to thrive. I acknowledge there's a larger social and political context about the underfunding of education and the undervaluing of teachers. And I don't pretend to know all of the complexities around that, but I'm here because I want to support attracting and keeping great educators in our school districts. When I thought about it, I thought, oh, the teachers are like the heart of our educational system. They're the ones who pump out the lessons and the knowledge and the care for our kids most of every day, most of the year, beyond time with kids in the classroom. And I know that my kids have learned to love reading. They've come home from core and been like, oh my God, here's what we learned today. They've learned to love Spanish. They've learned to have better conversations. And our teachers have a lot of these spoken and unspoken expectations on their shoulders and need to wear many hats. Okay, I wrote a lot of them down, but I won't tell you all of them. But I think adding to all of the regularly working beyond their contract hours, when you add economic stress, to me, that sounds like chronic stress. And chronic stress depletes the heart and the nervous system, which I understand a lot as a coach. And so when I think about our teachers' nervous systems, they have huge impact on our kids' nervous systems. And so if we want kids, human beings, community members who are have a balanced nervous system and who are curious, compassionate, resilient, creative, they learn that from the adults that they spend time with. So I believe that we really need to show that we value them and give them a competitive, sustainable salary that allows them to keep up with the cost of living. They need to know they have a bright future in which they can blossom and eventually retire without necessarily relying on a partner to make that happen. And I feel like we need to do that here or we will lose out. Teachers clearly aren't in the game to get rich, right? Most of them are in it because they love to teach, they love to learn, they love our kids, and they have heart. So as a member of this community, I strongly encourage the board to work out a way to increase the offer to include salaries that are at least on par with, and ideally slightly higher than our surrounding districts. So
Thank you, Amy.
great teachers, can I just finish my sentence? New and experienced, want to teach here and want to stay. Thank you.
Next, I have Lisa Rudolph.
Board members, Ms. Glimmy, and the OUSD directors and staff.
August 2016, then Superintendent Dr. Seaton contacted me to ask me if I wanted a job teaching math, as the teacher they had hired quit 2 weeks before the school year started. I couldn't take the job at that time, and they found a teacher a couple of weeks into the school year, very similar to Tessa's story. But then Dr. Seaton contacted me again in December and asked me to take over for that teacher as they were putting that teacher on leave after winter break. The teacher had tried to teach the entire curriculum in the first half of the year. I spent 5 weeks in that classroom until they found a teacher to finish the year. The next year, I took a full-time position at OIS. I am now in my 6th year of teaching math at OIS, and this makes me the senior member of the math department. In these years, I have worked with 16 math teachers total. I need to repeat that number, 16 math teachers. This does include long-term subs, but I count because they were part of the math department. They came to our meetings and they were responsible for the education of our students. Out of that number of teachers, there were only 3 retirees in that group. The others left because the job was too hard, they couldn't make enough money to live in the Bay Area, or they were let go or encouraged to leave because they weren't good enough teachers. I spent countless hours working with some of these teachers to help them improve their practice, not because I had to, but because I wanted the best for Orinda students. All that time invested only to lose so many of them. I was hoping this year would be the beginning to putting together a strong, stable math department. But earlier this evening, you accepted the resignation of yet another math teacher who is leaving because she can't afford to live in the Bay Area on what our district pays her. So once again, I will be sitting in interviews for a new math teacher. Years past, we've had some very strong candidates who we've lost because they've gone to other districts for higher salaries. Other districts are putting the COLA on their salary schedules, and if we don't, I expect we'll lose those strong candidates again. Teachers are very appreciative of the 7% raise made possible by the recent parcel tax. Liz Doust and many parents worked side by side with district directors and many OEA members, including myself, to raise teacher salaries from among the lowest in the county. Teachers were told that this 7% was off the table as far as the 23-24 negotiations went, that it was separate from these negotiations, the negotiations process, and would not be used during that process this year. But that is neither here nor there. The current pay scale is more competitive now, thankfully, and that's what was promised to the community, and that's what we need to focus on maintaining. If neighboring districts use the historic COLA to give their teachers a higher percentage salary than we do, we will lose the competitiveness and we will have a more difficult time filling that math position. And while it's true that it has been traditionally difficult to fill math positions, we are now seeing a shortage in other areas also. Catherine Palmer Collins told me that I could say that even core teachers, who used to be a dime a dozen, are hard to come by. Witness our eighth grade class of 2024 going without a decent full-time teacher for the first entire semester. This is a nationwide problem, made all the worse by the high cost of living in our area. I hope that we can work together to solve this. Thank you.
Next, I have Brian Rogers.
Good evening, board. Thank you so much. I am here tonight as an individual. I am the president of One Orinda, but I do not speak on behalf of One Orinda. But I'm also a father of 4 children in the Orinda public school system, having one at each or a couple at each level. I just want to say and take the opportunity tonight to say to everyone in this room that the folks that I get to interact with in the work that I do with Orinda schools, the parents don't necessarily get to be in the room when the negotiations are going on. But I would like to speak for the parents in saying that I want everyone during negotiations to take care because the parents in this community are frustrated, they're confused, they don't understand what's going on, and they feel as if the information that they're getting is not valid. And I'm not saying that is coming from anywhere in particular, but it is happening. And we know that in this community, we raise $5 million a year in order to support our schools. A lot of that money almost 95% of that money goes right back into the school to support everything that we want for our students and everything that we want for our teachers to support you and keep you here. But if it gets too crazy, what we're going to see is a deterioration of that support in this community. And we need to hold that dear because that will start to erode the 10% of the budget that this community supports out of their parcel taxes and their donations every day to support our students in Orinda. So I would hope that ongoing, the communications to the parent community can be truthful, that we come together in community so that our students, our teachers, our community can continue to maintain the high quality education that we provide our students. Thank you for your time.
And finally, I have Liz Doust.
Let me start by saying that teachers are some of the most important people in our children's lives, hands down. I know that personally, my 3 daughters and our whole family have been deeply impacted by the teachers that they have worked with here in Orinda. And as a former middle school teacher, I know firsthand the importance of dedicated, caring, and passionate teachers. My oldest daughter wants to be an architect because of her newfound love of math inspired by Lisa Rudolph. Taught my middle daughter to be who you are in 1st grade, a mantra we all still live by. And Erica Damaniakis, Heather Tarashi, and Allie Bingham have steadfastly supported my youngest daughter through the many ups and downs of elementary school after COVID. I've also served another unique position here in Orinda, that of a school board member for 4 years. In addition to helping support the district through the challenges of the pandemic, I was well versed on all things budget related. There's one thing we can all agree on. We all want to compensate teachers more for the incredible life-changing work they do every day. And any raise we give is never enough. Unfortunately, we are at the whim of the state budgeting and school funding formula, and Orinda loses out every time. There's not a magical hidden reservoir of funding in our district's budget, as you can hopefully see from the budget presentation this evening. No one here is trying to hide funding or shortchange our teachers. In my experience, Orinda does its best to go above and beyond to support our teachers and staff, given our limited resources compared to other districts. We rely heavily on parents and local community to bolster our budget and do as much as we possibly can to offset our lack of funding from the state. In that vein, after I stepped down from the school board last year, I volunteered to run the Measure Z parcel tax campaign for the district with the sole goal of raising additional local funding to pay our amazing teachers. There was no way to secure this dedicated funding for salary increases otherwise. With the hard work of a few of us in this room, Measure Z passed with a 76% yes vote. We fought hard to make the additional parcel tax a reality, and teachers were able to see the direct impact of the funding already this school year with a 7% bump in pay. The Measure Z funds are part of the district's general fund and are immediately put to use in a good faith effort to support teachers. I'm upset to see that this local funding that I and other volunteers worked so hard for is barely being acknowledged. Without Measure Z, the 10% total raise offered for this year would be a pipe dream. Orinda is unique, and we shouldn't be comparing ourselves to other districts and communities as we navigate our budget challenges. Teachers see numerous other benefits being part of Orinda USD. Small classes, classroom aids, professional development, the great support of the community. I would also like to mention that another hallmark of Orinda is the collaborative spirit and positive working relationships between teachers, staff, and the district. I'm disheartened to see the change witnessed here and would encourage everyone to work as hard as they possibly can to get back to a place where respect and positive intentions are paramount. We can rise above this, and we have to show our students and our community that we are able to productively engage and listen. The future of our district depends on this collaborative effort and shared vision.
Thank you, Liz. We've reached the 20-minute mark. I've received one additional card that's marked for the agenda item negotiations. We can either hear it now or we can come back at the end of the meeting and hear this public comment at that time.
I think if we just have the one, I think that's fine.
Okay. I agree. All right. Katie O'Neill.
So this is off the cuff. I don't know how long, but I am Katie O'Neill at Wagner Ranch. A lot of your faces are new to me, but I have been here in the district for over 25 years. In 2007, it was 2008, I was on the negotiating team for OEA for the first time. I have since been on 5 other teams for negotiating, for 5 other years for negotiating, some more recent, of course, than that. As you can imagine, in 2008, it was not a lot of fun. If you're familiar with education in California, it was quite a year following 2007. And since then, I have paid pretty close attention to the money that flows in and out of the district, and what we receive for COLA, all that kind of thing from the state. As a negotiator, I heard from people who are sitting where you sit now. Some of you personally, I've heard this to my face, that we would love to pay you more. If the state would just give us more, we would, that's how we would spend that money. We would love to pay you more if there was a higher COLA. In those years, since 2008, the COLAs have been slim. And as I have been paying attention, I can count on one hand, if I don't use the thumb even, I can still count on one hand the number of times that Orinda teachers have gotten the full COLA that the state has given Orinda on the salary scale. It would not take my thumb. Most of those have been recent. You have an 8.22% COLA, and yes, you have money coming in from other places, but you have an 8.22% COLA. And I know, as well as you know, what that money was intended for when the state gave it to the school districts. It was not intended to add new ideas to our existing budget. It was to fund the underfunded things that are already on our agenda, in our budget, because for years they have not been funded. And now you have an opportunity to use that 8.22% to do exactly what I have heard, as I said. People who have been sitting where you're sitting, some of you personally, have looked me in the face and said, if we had it, we would give it to you. Have it.
Closes our public comment. We'll move into item 7A, discussion of the proposed state budget implications update. Ms. Fleming.
Wait a second.
No, they obviously don't want to hear about the budget.
I can stay.
Yeah.
I would just like to encourage all of our teachers that are here tonight to
Hear the budget presentation?
I'd love to. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Close the doors.
Okay. I think I'll get started if that's okay. All right. So, okay. We sort of have a series of budget presentations as we kick off the budget planning time with the proposed budget by the governor in January. So this evening, the overview of this evening's presentation, I'll just touch up, since we've already covered the governor's initial presentation, I'll just touch briefly on that again, but really focus on how that affects our revenues, talk a little more about what our revenues comes from, how do we spend our money, just in a bigger picture, where is reserves for the district budget, and then potential, as we mentioned in the January presentation, the governor's budget actually impacts our budget negatively in the out years. So we're going to talk about potential reductions or savings and where that could be, so we can hear from the board about the input as we prepare for the second interim, which is a big presentation for our budget and a big kind of a spot in our ongoing budget development process. And then we'll hear from you any other input and discussion. So that's the overview of the budget so that you know what we're heading. Please stop me at any point as opposed to, or hold your questions, but I'm thinking it's easier if we stop in the middle of the presentation. So this is just a reminder of the timeline of how this works. Usually the governor proposes by January 10th, and that's when we got the budget presentation. And the next big presentation by the governor, or the next key point in the state budget development, is May. Between the January and the May revise from the budget, Mika and her team are really working hard right now on the second interim budget, which is our current budget. So that's tightening our revenues, making sure that we know exactly how much money is in there, which is pretty set at this point, but it's really examining our expenditures. So making sure that all our expenses are very clear, so that when we come to the end of the year, we know exactly what the funding looks like. We adopt the new budget for the year in June. The budget bill deadlines are on June 15th, and then state enacts the budget in July. Just a couple of reminders around the governor's budget proposal. The governor's budget proposal and the potential impact. We presented that in January. The biggest issue was the $38 billion budget shortfall, and it has mainly to do with the 2022 tax collections being well below the budget assumptions, and also the fluctuations in the capital gain revenues for the last 2 years. So it's those 2 years that are now affecting the next 3 years. And we are hopeful. What we're hearing is that it's really a kind of a short-term effect, as we're seeing all factors of rebounding, but we are dealing with these shortfalls of the last 2 years as they're hitting the budget now. So due to this shortfall of the state revenue, our multi-year budget was negatively affected. So what that means is that we don't do budgets just a year at a time. We always have to have a solid budget, fiscally solvent for the 3 years at a time. So really where the budget was affected from the state was in the 24-25 and 25-26 school year. So I'll go into some revenue sources here. So I really wanted to make sure that the board understood our revenue sources. So as we plan for the second interim and our multi-year planning, we understand, can we gain some extra revenue somewhere? Where is our revenue coming from? And then when we get into expenditures, where could we tighten our expenditures or do some reduction? So that's why we are going into that. So on the left-hand side in that chart, what you see in the light blue, there are little different colors on my screen in there, but the bright blue color is the local control funding formula, or LCFF. And the very tiny number underneath is 63.9, and you can see that at the table. That is our state ongoing funding. That is the LCFF ongoing revenue that we receive from the state. The rest of it, the orange and the very tiny sliver of that dark blue is the federal funding. Those are the other state funds and federal. So like special education, some universal meal funding, some very categorical funds, or maybe some like one-time state grants and so on. And then the big blue sliver, that's dark blue, which is our local funding, is just under 27%. And it's broken down by parcel taxes A, B, and Z, which now equate to 14.4% of our entire general fund funding, and one foundation, which is 8.5%, or just under 9%. So we heard quite a bit about COLA, and COLA is a cost of living adjustment. It's a pretty complex way of how the indicators work, but it comes from the federal government. There's 6 indicators that happen throughout the year that determine what the COLA is. For us, it only applies on the state revenue, on the LCFF piece of pie. So, and I'll get to that on the next slide as well. But for that big chunk that's non-LCFF, we do not get COLA. And that's a really big difference in Orinda versus some other districts that are, when you look at that big pie chart, and almost all of it is the light blue or whatever the color, when it's mainly state funded and you get the COLA on that, then that increases for the entire source of revenue.
So does that mean that we're not getting the full cost of living adjustment then, because it's
We
all?
don't get it on all of our revenues. And if you can hold on to that question, I'll come to it in just 2 slides. So this is also was used in our budget presentation in January, and it's actually a slide from school services. And they talked quite a bit in January that the last 2 years of COLA was an anomaly. It was very high. And it is stabilizing and reaching more normal levels as it's coming in the future years. Our local costs are actually local here in Orinda are much higher actually than what the state provides. So some of our expenses in the district are much higher than the 8.22% too. So they exceed the COLA.
Can you go back to that? What was the orange line?
Oh, it's just the trend line.
Okay.
So the general trend. So going back to sort of how does this affect our revenue sources? So if I'm looking at the pie chart, not the bar, the percent versus actual dollars. When Mika's developing the budget, and Mika, if you have anything to add here, please at any point stop me. We don't actually look at we get this percent and we use that percent. We work in dollars. I mean, when we look at any other, we're working in money. How much money do we have? And that's how much money we're expending. But on the percentages, going back to that source, just to reemphasize, we've only received COLA on that LCFF funding when it comes to ongoing. And to further complicate it, which I didn't get into all the details on the slides, is we actually only receive it based on ADA. So not even on the entire LCFF. So if our student attendance is dropping, we actually get lower amount so it fluctuates throughout the year.
So then I have a point to make. You did a presentation a few meetings ago and we lost 400,000?
Right, on the attendance.
On the attendance, yeah.
So we don't get COLA on that 400.
Right.
We don't get COLA on every child LCFF revenue. We get it based on ADA, how many kids are actually attending. So when we look at how much revenue has increased from 22-23 to 23-24, which is that other bar graph, that was a $1.8 million increase. So in dollars, when we split it actually or take it on the entire revenue source or over the entire pie, it actually equals 4.4% increase in revenue. So we did not increase our revenue by 8.2%. We increased it by 4.4. Now, when we start, that's not
from the state.
From the state, right, when it's applied. Now, I will say our parcel taxes are flat, so they don't increase. There's zero COLA. Our Orinda is a flat donation, doesn't increase with cost of living. So that's why if we just take those dollars and apply them, it is not an 8.22% increase to the entire source of revenue. And yet you will see we use all of our revenue to actually pay for salaries and staffing costs. So I think that's the biggest piece of understanding with regards to cost and how do we increase, how does COLA impact our budget? on that last bullet, our cost of doing business is actually going up. We use LCFF for everything, our state funding, and we use our parcel taxes mainly for staff, as you will see. But One Orinda is also used for other core programming, but LCFF is also used for electric bills. It's how we do cost of doing business. We don't get separate electrical bills. We don't also get enough money from federal government or state government to pay for special education. It's an unfunded mandate. We don't get, we have funding for roofs or leaks in roofs. So all of our expenses, everything to operate the district is paid for out of LCFF funding. And some of those have gone up by 30%, so far beyond 8.22 or the 4.4 or whatever number. So then it starts offsetting, but we have to pay those bills. So we don't go in percentages. Here's the money we have and here are the bills that we have. So what happened in January? During the first interim in December, when Mika presented the budget, as I mentioned, we must actually show the county that we are solvent 2 years out. That's our obligation. So we were presenting our budgets or making our assumptions based on the COLA or how much revenue we're going to get next year. So when the state proposed or the governor proposed the budget in January, they decreased the out years potential revenues. So what that meant was that they actually decreased our LCFF entitlement for next year by over $850,000. And we showed this chart. So the difference even between what we planned in December versus what we have to deal with now. And even though that money hasn't come through yet, it's not next year yet, we still have to show solvency to our county and to the state. We have to somehow figure out how are we dealing with this shortfall of $850,000 that we haven't actually put in our budget yet, but we put this up there for you guys last time.
Can you share what happens? We send something to the county and they don't approve it, what that process is like? And
so we cannot send something to the county where we show this kind of a shortfall. We actually have to send to the county that we have our approved reserve. So for us, it's 9%. We actually can't be over 10%. So we're literally sitting in there 9 or 10% in out years. And for us to go below, they would kick it back and say, which reductions are you going to make sure that you are solvent in the out years? So then a budget is presented with reductions, and there's specific reductions. So how many staff members, and not like names, but how many staff members and how many positions are you going to be reducing in 24, 25, 25, 26 to make sure that this budget, that you can actually make your reserve.
And they will not approve anything unless.
And Mika, no, they kick it back. And actually, if you're showing a super declining reserve, which actually happened here last year for us because we were negotiating and giving reserves out and dropping our reserve, we actually did get a letter of like, monitor your reserve, you're going down pretty, significantly. But because we were going for parcel tax and all sorts of things, we were able to say it's fine.
Can you, back on this one, can you talk a little bit about, just so we can like connect the dots for us and everybody else, like if you were to give a certain amount of percentage increase this year, like what that impact looks like in out years and why this
actually accumulates.
Exactly. Yeah.
It accumulates. So meaning an ongoing increase in a salary or an ongoing increase in any kind of an expense that's ongoing actually accumulates because the cost of that expense stays and grows every year. So it accumulates every year.
And I assume that's what's so kind of terrifying about a COLA for next year at 0.76, because basically almost like they're going to give us the same amount of money, but we know all of our costs are going up.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. And we're assuming,
we need
we're
to plan
expecting that it's going to be about 1%.
Okay.
But
Relatively small.
But even like our salary schedule, just our step and column is 1.5% cost.
So even without giving any increase next year, every teacher will get us 1.5% increase on the step and column.
That's a total cost of our salary, step and column, total cost of our step and column is about 1.5. Is that?
I see, total, but not per
Total. No,
teacher.
no,
I guess,
no.
thank you.
Okay, so when it comes to revenues, and I want to go into the local revenues because that was the state. I mean, you saw there's not very many districts that get that big of a piece of pie that's coming from local. And we were one of the lowest funded districts in the state. The consistently in the bottom 10 out of 1,000 was, that was a vetted by the attorney's statement as we were running for parcel tax because we were going in between bottom third, were we the third from the bottom or sixth from the bottom? So we landed on that, but it was literally like, I don't know, 3 or 6 pick. That's out of over 1,000 districts is one of the worst positions we can be in. Partially, it's we just don't have a high number of unduplicated students. And so we don't get that funding. Also, we are a TK8 district. TK8, the TK12 districts get more money because high school students bring in more money per student. High school only districts get more money per students because they don't have the other grades, because they get that grade level adjustment. So we're TK8. We have one of the lowest unduplicated counts. So if you have a higher unduplicated count, you get a much higher number. And with that, all of those one-time grants, or majority of them, a lot of them are also come with the percentage of unduplicated, which we all often don't get. And then some of the districts, if you get a much higher number, what is it, 55% is the concentration grant. You reach over 55%, you on top of that get a concentration grant. We're not eligible for any of that.
And some of those districts are basic aid districts, right?
No, if you're basic aid, you are not any of that.
Right.
Yes.
Which we are not.
But Akalani's is basic aid, yes.
Right.
So that's like a whole, yes.
Different funding.
Yeah. So we're grateful. So we're so grateful to Orinda because they're saving us, to our community. And these are the ways that they're doing that. Parcel tax, Measure A and B, which are ongoing. So we get those, and there's no sunset to those parcel taxes. And then Measure Z, which sunsets. It's a 7-year tax. We had always hoped that there would be some miracle state funding that we would have to replace it. But there was always a thought also that it could be a possibility that we would have to renew that parcel tax because 7 year into the tax, and we're already first year into it, that tax actually expires and we lose that revenue out of our budget. So there is a plan to go out, or we will have to think about going out probably year 5 of the tax to make sure that we can pass it in time.
And to be, all of those are part of our general fund, right? Those are
Correct.
Yeah.
We do not, and Mika, you can confirm that we don't put it in a restricted, it actually goes straight into unrestricted general fund. Right?
The parcel tax is.
Oh, I'm sorry, restricted general fund, yes.
But it is being used to, for class size reduction.
Yeah. One foundation is almost 9% of the total revenue. And they fundraise mainly with a direct donation per student, which is $2,200, which is the highest around in the area, if not the highest. And then they have many other fundraising efforts through events and other efforts, which is rather incredible because that one foundation almost gives and brings as much as all of our parcel taxes. So altogether, I mean, our community members are paying over $800 now just to Orinda. And on top of that, they're paying to actually Akalani's Union High School District because it's one community, right? So what are they covering? What do they pay for? Parcel tax actually has very specific language. And so the measure, they're all fund core programs, class size reduction, staff retention and recruitment. So Measure A and B are currently, or last year, we are working with our Parcel Tax Oversight Committee, and they do this down to a T of how many staff members are they covering, what's the percentage, and so on. So last year, when they presented to the board, they said we covered 27 full-time staff members, which is incredible. That's over an entire, it's 1.5 of our elementary schools. But as you can see, and we wanted to put this in there because this is a strong message from our Parcel Tax Oversight Committee, is that purchasing power has actually really significantly diminished over the years due to no COLA on that funding. So back in 1920, that same parcel taxes were covering 37 FTEs. So that's 10 entire more staff members. Measure Z, the top bullet on there was retention and recruitment. Second one was class size reduction. And that's what we immediately went into and said to the staff, this is how much we can afford, it's 7%, and negotiated that for this school year. And that was effective July 1, 2023. What is One Foundation Fund? In some of the districts, you will find Parent Clubs Foundation, and that will really be programming that is, here's your core, and the parents will fund sort of the fun stuff on top. This is the core funding. I was trying to count up how many staff members and counted almost 70 staff members, individuals that are funded by one foundation, because we're talking certificated and classified. So through class size reduction, what class size reduction means, more teachers. That's what it means. You got to get more teachers into the classroom so that you can reduce the class sizes. So we have 4 elementary school teachers, 7 middle school teachers, and they are listed through elective teachers, librarian, world language, music, art, and a counselor. 4 elementary library clerks, 2 intervention coaches, 3 PE teachers, elementary school art programs, elementary music program, 1 wellness counselor, almost all instructional aides, one-to-one technology for every single student in the district. So a wonderful presentation today. Lunchtime programmings, that's mental health, social emotional support, right? Athletic support for OIS after school hours. And then all the supplies. We haven't even touched, classroom supplies, instructional supplies, like basic core supplies to run schools. And so much more, because I haven't even touched the parent club on top of that, on how many facilities and what are we talking about right now of them actually helping us fix up some of our really, really aging facilities that the Measure E and I are just not covering. So that's massive. And what's really amazing is that they do this every year. What's really scary is that this is one-time funding. And we just assume when you get a new CBO that comes in, Mika goes, but this is one-time funding. How can we have this every single year in our budget? And we go like, because we trust the community, but it is one-time funding. So it is scary when you sit with, sorry, I just see Brian still here, with Brian and you go like, okay, can we depend on this year and the 2 years out? And when you hear that the fundraising is down, so participation is down this year and the fundraising is down. Our parents are affected by economy and tech layoffs and all sorts of things. So this is crucial for us because over 60 or under 70 staff members being affected by one-time funding could be detrimental to the district.
I just want to comment because that list struck me when I was reviewing this for the meeting. These are programs, a lot of them that have gone by the wayside in other districts.
Yeah.
And really, I think just speak to how the whole community values education. There are people paying parcel tax who don't have kids in school anymore, who are year after year supporting these programmings that are just incredible. They're really gone in a lot of places. I just zoom in right on PE teachers, right? That's an anomaly. I think that's incredible, but also it's a shout out to Orinda in general for that. I think that's amazing.
It really is. And it is staff. Any reduction in this is also like, if you look at that big blue piece of pie, that's what they're covering is staff. And the other one is core supplies.
Sure.
So we'll switch gears and go into how the money is spent. So I'll go to the pie chart first. And the big pink is the personnel costs. Orinda spends just over 80% on personnel matters, and that's compensation and benefits, right? And then other costs, basically 20% is other things like textbooks and things to run schools and buildings and electricity and gas and so on. So most of our money is in personnel. When you look at just on the bar chart, the reason we included this is just to show the state funding. Again, this discrepancy between state funding and how much we depend on local is state funding is that sort of a light blue. The pink is how much we have to pay just for our staff salaries. We would never make it if we were just going by state funding. So how much the local revenue or how much revenue is needed to actually cover our staff. And we are in people business. That's what we do. We do staff, right? So when we talk about on the next few slides about compensation, it's because you can't remove textbooks. Every student has to have a textbook. We do have to have lights on. So it really, when you're talking about where can you save money, unfortunately does come from that piece of pie that's in pink, because we do look at constantly, where can we save in contracts? Where can we save in that blue chunk of a pie? And we're examining that down to $1, but you can only go that far there, right? So then when you're starting to save money, where can it go? And you have to look at personnel costs. So where are we in personnel? So majority, as I mentioned, is on salaries and benefits. And we do want to be competitive. I mean, that's crucial. And one of the reasons, and I love that her name, Tess, shared that story, because we actually were able to recruit a teacher with our competitive salary out of another district to be able to work here. And part of that is also our work conditions. We have some of the best work conditions in the area, and people want to work here. And that's fantastic. And we want to keep that. And that's due to some of those slides that we just showed on what's on those slides. So we improved the compensation standing in the area with Measure Z, which is great. And we want to continue to do that. Absolutely. What we haven't talked about is benefits, and we won't get into it too much because benefits are very complicated. We will say is that we do have two-party Kaiser benefits. Currently, they're paid at the 2023 rate. You can look at different districts. Some of them are full benefits. Some of them have two-party plus one. Sometimes there's a portion of benefits. I mean, you can get really lost in the benefit world, but benefits come as part of it. I mean, it's a really important thing, especially if you have a full family. It's huge.
That's what they cost.
It is, yes, they do. There's a real cost to them. The work conditions are highly desirable. We have some of the lowest class sizes in our TK area, TK classes are 20, 22, and that's pretty standard everywhere. But the rest of them is usually, I mean, they go up to 30. And our middle schools, they usually are around 31, 32 in some of the middle school. There is nowhere near that we get that. And I want to emphasize that we do not want that. Class size reduction is highly valued in this community, and I think it's valued by our staff too, and it's valued by us as well. Instructional aides are in every single elementary class, as long as we can staff it, right? But that is what is funded. And then we do have professional development and coaching. And, this year we couldn't fill all of our instructional coaches positions, but that is ultimately the goal, is to support our staff. And we've truly missed some of those positions. So where have we moved on our salary schedule? We understand, and this is why we worked really hard to pass that parcel tax, how important it is to move our teachers and to be competitive. This is the Contra Costa County. These numbers were provided by the County Office of Education. So that's where the numbers are coming from. This is compensation only, and there's a couple of slides with benefits too. This is the starting salary. So when we're trying to get the teachers that are just getting into the profession, and you can see two green lines there. The one on the lower end is the Orinda with the 7%, which has already been provided this year. And then the other line is the Orinda with 10%, which is what's on the table right now. And you can see that we're highly competitive in the area. We are not as competitive on the maximum teacher salary. Our salary schedule is a little skewed, but we are not at the bottom. The lower line you can see is at 7%, and then where it is with the 10%. I will say that just a note that the school districts that have, and I know it's really hard to see, but if you can zoom in on your computers, the ones that have three little asterisks in front are districts that have already closed their negotiations for this year. So yes, we know Akalani's has not negotiated, but those are not usually clearly that's a high school district and they're basic aid. And then, for example, in here, it's West Contra Costa County. So, like Lafayette right below and Walnut Creek, San Ramon's negotiating, Oakley, they have the asterisks right below. And then there's some like Martinez, Moraga, that are still negotiating. Earlier comments about high school is just funded differently. This is if we take comparisons between TK8 districts. And you can see that at the moment we are very competitive. We understand there's a couple of districts that are still negotiating. We get that. And we're at the table as well. So we do believe that this district is clearly demonstrating. It is our goal to stay highly competitive. That has been commitment to our teachers. These graphs get wonky, and I will say that they hurt me with how they are, but we wanted to show the compensation is still ordered in the same order. What happens when you add the benefits to the top? And the benefits are all over the place across the county. Orinda has never offered full benefits. Benefits do cost. Our benefits cost about a full percent equivalent of a raise. So it has been where does that get accomplished? And that's just discussed at the negotiating table. It is, again, it's a pot of money. It's the dollars and how are they divided, right? But even with the benefits, I think the Orinda is still competitive at the starting. And then here's where they are at the maximum, or where we are, excuse me. As a total, benefits were about just under 27% of the total expenditures at the first interim. So it's a significant portion of our budget of the expenses.
So before you go on, I just want to comment about, because there are multiples of these bar graphs, but
please,
I'm really happy to see this movement. I was out knocking on doors with Liz a year ago, like almost exactly a year ago. And then to see where we could end up, that's the movement that I know all of us really wanted to see and really value. Of course, we want the very best here in Orinda, but those are some big shifts, and I'm really happy to see that. It's helpful.
Thank you. We were very bottom.
I know.
Yes. Okay, kind of last portion of this is the reserves. Last year, the law began was implemented that school districts with over 2,500 students may not keep more than 10% of unassigned reserve. Unless that reserve is actually assigned for something very specific, we actually cannot keep a reserve more than 10%. Basic aid districts are exempt because they fluctuate based on property taxes. Thank you. And it's just based on enrollments. Actually, ADA, excuse me. So last year we were below 2,500 ADA. Now we're right above it. So we do fall in this. So we must keep no more than 10%. And we actually don't have assigned reserves. We have gotten recommendations from a very steering committee, like a safety steering committee, facilities, that we should have some reserves assigned, but we don't have them right now. So we have the basic reserve of 3% that's mandated by the state. And then this district has a required additional 6% reserve. And that is a minimum reserve of 9%. The 6% additional reserve covers about month and a half of payroll. So it's really an emergency. Should there be an emergency in a situation,
State doesn't pay us.
State doesn't, we've had deferrals before. We've had an emergency, when Glorietta was shut down for a day, we didn't even get it paid back for like a year and a half from the state for that day. Now that was one day, but you could have emergencies, and that is literally what that is for. So month and a half this is not a big cushion. Additional funds other than general fund are not available for general expenditure. So there are other reserves, but they're not legally allowed to be touched. And Mika covers these in every budget. So I'm going to briefly go through them. So cafeteria fund, we can only use on cafeteria. That's the food service fund. We are about to work for a consultant. How can we improve our food service cafeteria so we can improve our food service? That is the only thing you can use it for. The deferred maintenance fund is only can be used on deferred maintenance and facility expenses. The building fund is Measure E and I. I see our architects are here, or Swinnerton's here. That's what they're going to be talking about. You can only use it on building projects. The developer fees by law can only be used for facilities if there's an enrollment increase. And we're going to be using them actually this year significantly at a couple of our schools. The capital outlay, this is by law, when the district sells a piece of property, you can only use it to upgrade facilities. That's the law. So we use it, I mean, I don't know how, it used to be much bigger.
Right.
We use it on emergency repairs. Because we don't have any kind of assigned reserves for any kind of emergency repair, that's really our emergency repair fund.
That's right.
We get interest based on our building fund from the bond, so we can use it only on Measure E and I projects. BASC is a brand new one that will have a fund balance at the end, we hope, and it will. But as you go through that fund this year, it's just how it works. So BASC is now belongs to the district as a district program due to major liability and issues in the past, which is great. We're working on it. But as a enterprise account, it can only be spent on BASC expenses only. Sorry, too many onlys. And retiree OPEB fund can only be spent on retiree benefits only. The district made a decision in 2014 to establish the fund. We contribute $10,000 annually out of the budget to this fund. We cannot pull this money as a whole out by law. It's gone. But we can, I mean, I guess if we were paying for retiree, like for the benefits, you could. That's the only way, that's the only thing you can use it for. Let's see. Okay, so our multi-year, this is from the first interim. This does not include, I just want to make sure it does not include any kind of bargaining agreements in here. So you can see why that reserve is like that.
Does include the 7% though.
Oh, yeah, the 7% is in there, yes. And so it does not include additional salary increases. It's based on the new COLA. It does assume the same increase in enrollment, which when we come back in March, we will decrease because we're just not realizing the enrollment projections. We will also decrease any staffing increases we assumed with that. It does make a major assumption that one will continue donating at the same level, which we're working with them right now on that. And then our reserves, so should we increase when the 3% gets added, or should it get added, so the 10%, the reserves will go to this year will be 11, next year it will go under the 9%, and the year out it will go down to 6%. So going back, Etta, to your question initially, we would have to present that to the county with, well, how will you address the going below 9%? So we will have to show some sort of savings or reductions in staffing along with that to get us to the 10%.
And they have to approve that. They have a plan. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so what we want to hear is your direction as we prepare for the second interim budget in March, as we're moving forward, and the shortfall from the state budget. I mean, the shortfall was about 800,000 as we prepare. We've met quite a bit and examined our programs. All of those slides and to your comments, Katie, about what makes us a special district, we're not recommending program reductions right now. We feel that those programs make Orinda the highest, why our test scores are high, why our academics are high, why our Healthy Kids Survey scores now are improving, why our working conditions are great, why we're the special district that we are. So we are at this moment not recommending program reductions because at some point, Brian and I and Mika were meeting and looking at possible layoffs that we would be considering as a draft this month, and then final action next month. That still is a possibility, but at this moment, we believe that we can, what we're calling right size, because we do have some class sizes that we could increase, especially at the middle school level. We do believe that we have some overstaffing that we would recommend reducing. But instead of going through official layoff processes, we believe that we can go through with retirements, resignations, and releases, and we would just not replace those vacancies. We would not fill them.
So would that be part of the second interim that you're bringing those?
So we would, so some of those savings,
Right.
We would actually
It would be reflected in.
show those to you possibly. Okay. Yeah. It depends also where we are in the process, right? I mean, we're going to be looking at the detail analysis I mentioned of all of our contracted services. It's that other sliver of the pie, and what are we doing? We just may not be able to realize those as quickly. So it's a multi-year ongoing. And then classified staff, we are examining as well. It's just a different workforce. Some of them we can look at. Right now we're not even staffed up in all of them, right? So sometimes you just don't fill those and we can save it that way. But in some classified areas, we've grown in enrollment, but we haven't actually supported them. So we're actually understaffed. So we just need to examine all of those. It's just a very diverse group of staffing. So this is sort of where we need the input of the board, if you agree, with the direction of right sizing through attrition or deeper, I guess, looking at it deeper to offset some of the potential costs. Because our next steps are, we're finalizing enrollment planning, staffing, support needs for students in 24. We want to make sure they're aligned to our district priorities, our fiscal reality. We do have to finalize any potential staffing reductions that are not just through attrition by March. So if we are going to do any kind of reductions in any area, we have to do that by March. We value partnership with one. We have meetings with them set up to make sure that we continue the one-time ongoing. And then the second interim budget is being presented on March 11th. The LCAP is a really important process right now. Our budget is supposed to be aligned to the priorities. So this is a brand new 3-year LCAP. So we got to issue the survey, working on the new goals, actions, and the budget resources that are supposed to. So that should be going out. And then, of course, we have ongoing negotiations, which I agree. I think it was Sean who mentioned that I hope they're resolved in a collaborative and quick manner, because I think that's the good for the whole health of the district. But that plays a major factor in the budget development.
Thank you. To answer your question, because you did ask for direction.
Yes.
I'm in favor of you and others in the office working through right sizing and natural, attrition that might occur this year to start with, and then bring that back to us. Let us know where we stand.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That was going to be my comment as well. I think it would be good to see what that number looks like and see where we're at. As Katie mentioned, others have mentioned, I mean, we are such a unique district with everything that we do offer through our programming. And, it's something that our students and just entire community really have relied on and grown with. And I would hate to have to see us cut any of our programs.
And I would be concerned if we cut things that are funded by Orinda, then we will lose donations, and that cut would be offset by a loss in revenue as well. So it wouldn't end up actually necessarily saving the district any money, and would hurt our students. So I'm not in favor of doing that unless we're in a very dire situation.
Yeah, if you could shed more light, I think that would be helpful, with some of the questions that we had. But I agree with my colleagues, so.
Okay.
Yeah, and likewise here. I think I think this is the right next step as far as the analysis. I think of course, yes, it's probably highly unlikely that the kind of the voluntary and then just the various different ways in which there may be opportunities for right sizing are going to exactly match like the ideal needs of the district. So this is where, as one of the speakers, mentioned, we need to figure out ways to be creative. This is where assuming all of your creativity will come into play to figure out how we can do this for the best outcomes for the students and for the teachers and the rest of the staff. That does feel like the best way to get this started.
Yeah, I mean, we have to know what that number is, right? To see where that puts us in our
comment on it, really.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I mean, we're gonna present a solvent budget on March 11th. But what I'm hearing is, and Mika, Brian, I'm looking at them because that's, here's our HR and here's money, to avoid reductions of the programming as much as possible is sort of what I'm hearing, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think right sizing is a good place to start and bring that to us so we understand what that dollar amount equals. And then go from there.
Okay, right, okay. And avoiding layoffs is,
Yeah.
Yes,
Sure.
Yeah.
completely.
okay. Okay,
I don't see any public comment on this item. I'd like to take a 5-minute.
Yes, please.
Okay, so we'll recess for 5 minutes.
good. Thank